Here we are in 2024. We have interest rates hovering at the 7.5% rate. We have inventory surging all across the country. And why is it surging? Because it's not selling. Why is it not selling? Because buyers have been telling us for a long time that it's too expensive. And despite all the reporting for the past 2 years, as we run into May of 2024, the 2-year anniversary for the end of the 3% 30-year fixed mortgage. And ultimately, what we're seeing is that even people with epically low rates are ready to sell their house because we're seeing properties hit the market all across the country. In Florida, for instance, nearly 60% more inventory than last year. The dangerous thing about all this, as we see inventory increasing all across the country, it's not selling. That's right. You're seeing the amount of unsold inventory stack up, right? Here's the reality though. Are we going to see a market crash? Can prices become detrimentally affected based on the pace of supply hitting the market? Said another way, can you flood a basement with a trickle of water, right? Do we have enough of an inventory load to see things go down? Now, there are a lot of scary data points across the country. I'm going to show you today where if you're looking around the country to buy a house, you'd better be very careful in a few specific markets because it is getting really weird. We're seeing rollback multi-year lows of reduced asking price. That means the sellers are coming into the market with record low year-over-year asking. I mean, they're already going down in price just where they hit the market. Nevertheless, the fact that when a seller brings their home on the market, do they get asking price? No, not in this market. They negotiate down 3 or 4%. It's a known percentage. So when you see places like Florida that are already starting asking prices, right now, current data, I'm going to show you, 2% under last year. They're starting there. They're going to drop another 3. That means that in all likelihood, by June, you could start seeing year-over-year price down 4 to 6% in many of the markets throughout the Florida market. Now, is that a surprise? Not if you're watching my channel, because I told you in December, I have a prediction video where I go on record saying this would happen. And by the way, in real time, we're seeing this narrative about how we don't have enough inventory. There's not enough homes. The reason why there's not sell-through, there's all this transaction volume. Remember, 2023, we barely sold more than 4 million homes, a number we have not seen that low since the late 1990s. Folks, that happened on a population base that's 25% smaller than now. We have a problem with buyer demand. And now we have to face it because of all these expert economists, those that are in the pockets of all these trade organizations that are in the real estate industry have been saying it's just a shortfall of inventory. It will be fine. Now, through the end of March, our annualized projection of sell-off for existing homes is a tiny hair over 2023 as it sits right now. How can that be? We have 10, 15% more inventory, mostly in different areas throughout the country. In Florida, we have 57% more homes to choose from. Yet we can't keep up. Our inventory and our volume of buyers making sales is dropping. How can that be? Why would that happen? Well, it's not hard to figure out. There's a statistic that just came out in the press that said 40% of current homeowners could not get pushed out of their house and come back in and buy it in the public. They can't actually afford to live in the house at today's terms. Now, that's a reality for a lot of the open buyer base. To me, it's a surprise that we even turned over 4 million homes because every month we turn around, because the price has still gone up. We have bigger problems, folks, because now we just faced reality. In the last 3 weeks, if you've been watching the real estate market, and particularly the stock market at large, you've been hearing there was days passing and people were losing a ton of money because the stock market got hit based on inflation narrative. That's not everything. You have to understand that now CNBC came out in the last 24 hours citing Bank of America economists that said Wall Street and everybody else needs to be prepared that we're not going to see Federal Reserve rate cuts until March of 2025 at the earliest. And many of the bettors on Wall Street are already putting this in their predictions. They're already baking this into what they think is going to happen. And it's finally setting in. I've been saying this since the end of last year. There is no way we are not at least going to see mid 7% interest rates. And here's why it could get worse. Because as we start to see continuous data where inflation is not on course, where we're seeing a lot of job issues, we're seeing a lot of bankruptcy filings for corporations. How in the world is everything still inflating in price? How is the economy still reporting good health? while we're seeing companies like Google, Nike, Tesla, Amazon, many others, all reporting restructuring, all reporting layoffs. And I'm sure it's not a stretch to say that if we can say that about the largest companies that exist in America, that this is not a factor that's trickling down to Main Street. We have to see with our eyes wide open that we are progressively heading into a recession. And the reality with our pricing, the fact that over January, February, and March of this year, we're still facing higher prices on everything from food, car insurance, and a matter of other things. That is just the sleight of hand that the Federal Reserve pushed all the prices through the pandemic, but then they handed the ball off to the federal government, who has been borrowing record numbers. They're borrowing $1 trillion of debt every 100 days. So much so that if you're paying attention towards the end of last year, the people buying our debt that we constantly are creating at 5% interest rate, the reality is the foreign buyers are not there for it anymore. That is what's pushing up 30-year fixed. So the mortgage rates that we see, they're higher because the bond traders are having a hard time with the buying side of that trade. So now the yields are higher, which means we're having higher interest rates. And that isn't changing because our government's still spending more. Our government spends more. Bond traders are like, nope, I'm going to go buy gold. I'll buy crypto. I'll buy whatever it is I'm going to buy. But in all reality, folks, we're going to see an interesting spring, fall season. And now we're seeing headlines like the ones I'm about to show you, where there's going to be predictions for 2024 of many markets around the country losing value in price. It's going to get tight. Before we wrap this video up, I want to show you some charts, some graphs of exactly where inventory is spiraling out of control, where it's getting really tricky, that if you're selling there or you're buying, you need to be really careful and do your homework. But before we dive in the data, dive below, smash the like button so we can make sure that as many people as possible get this update and take cover.
Record high mortgage levels are starting to take their toll. The mortgage rate is at 14.75%.
Ask not what the Great Reset can do for you. Ask what you can do for the Great Reset.
All right, the first chart I want to show you is 1 year change in active housing inventory for sale. The shift between March 23 to March 24. This is new data. Look at Florida, dark, bright green. You can see that the major end of the graph, the darker side, is where all the inventory is piling up. Inventory is unsold. Buyers have hit the wall. Florida is obviously seeing the worst. The entire South, which is fascinating, right? Because these were the darling states of the entire pandemic. And could this be a reversal of a whole lot of traffic that took place in a short period of time with a lot of PPP money, stimulus dollars? Everybody and their brother had a little extra check, and many of them flooded the South. But you can see Washington's up 24%, Colorado up 24%, Arizona up 21%, Nebraska 29%, Minnesota 30%, Vermont pushing 40% year over year, second to Florida in terms of overall growth. And the only state on all of this map that's negative is 26% down is Nevada. Nevada is very low, which is unbelievable. Unbelievable to see what they're actually producing there. The next chart I want to show you is active housing inventory. We're making a comparison of March of last month to March of 2019. All right. So we obviously want to look at a chart like this because March of 2019 would be the most recent stabilized year where there's something really weird is going on. But take a look at this against history. You can see the states that are darker brown. The darker they are, the more beneath inventory they are, meaning these states that are negative, really dark, are much, much lower than a normalized time in the marketplace that we can look to in the past. Now you can see the lighter states. These are returning to inventory. Now you see Tennessee negative 20, you see Florida negative 14, negative 4. Listen to this, everybody. This is March 2019. I guarantee you that these states like Tennessee, Florida, Texas, maybe even Nebraska, Colorado, Idaho, these states, if you pull up just a couple months later, I bet you, because I know for sure Florida's showing negative 14%, but if you drop down March, April, May, June 2019, meaning we're already that far back. And the reason why this matters is after 2019, inventory went straight down. There was nothing after that. It really got tight. And this chart's saying, hey, look, this is normal, okay? How are we against normal? Now, the problem with this chart, any of these, the negative 20, negative 4, these are slipping. These numbers are slipping fast because we're going up in all these states, and the inventory, as I told you in the opening, they're not selling. Every month, most of these states are increasing their supply. Their static inventory, static of unsold homes. It'll be, in my opinion, give it 3 or 4 more months, you're going to see way lighter states across. You can see the northern areas are still holding fast. They just have really low inventory against history. Orlando area homeowners, don't pay too much when you list your house. I'm Jared Jones. I list your home for just 3% so you can save thousands. It's no secret that the real estate industry has changed forever on how real estate commissions are charged. And if you're not careful, you'll pay the old cost of commission. Don't let anyone you know sell before talking to me, Jared Jones, top selling area agent, where I list your home for just 3%. Make one call, that's all, and start packing. Next chart I want to show you really quick is focusing in on Florida. This is year-over-year inventory growth across the state. Now, I'm going to go ahead and zoom in so you can take a closer look. We'll move from south to north so you can see these darker areas. These darker areas, if you're looking in any of these marketplaces or you are selling, this is where you need to do your homework, because this is where we're hitting more of a saturation point. There's more supply competing with your home. If you're a buyer in these markets, you should have a fighting chance at negotiating a better deal for yourself. Now, this is fascinating to me, folks, as we look through the South, because the largest narrative across the state, and rightly so, has been focused on the Southwest region. Fort Myers, Cape Coral, Naples, and Sarasota, obviously Northport and Port Charlotte, amongst all of these areas. High amounts of inventory. There was a hurricane that came through in 2022. All of that rebuilding, a lot of those properties are hitting the market, and it's just saturating the market. Now, you're seeing it here. This is the fascinating part. You can see a lot of areas from Fort Lauderdale to Miami starting to line up. None of them are brown, except for maybe a couple tiny little zip codes in here are down year over year, but most of them, they're all up. And this is what everybody's watching. Are we going to see prices really correct? Because across the state, once again, 57% increase inventory is being distributed all over the place. This next view we have is the Central Florida market. You can see a lot of markets in Florida are up 80% year over year. Bunch of zip codes through the middle of town, 80%, 144%. So these more populous areas, this is the Orlando metro, you can see a lot of dark spots. Daytona Beach, same thing, 80% up, 80%, 117% up. All of St. Pete for a long time, which is just here off the shores of Tampa and Tampa Bay, you've got this just a lot of activity. Prices are going to be affected by this much inventory hitting all at once, and buyers are going to be stalled. These interest rates are going to drive up buying costs. Passing further north, you can see Ocala and Gainesville. Most of Ocala is right around 60% up. You can see this area down here in the southwest of downtown Ocala is 108% up. Up here towards Reddick is 180% up. Gainesville is starting to stack 137%, 154%, 157%. Gainesville has been hot for a long time. Even when much of the rest of Florida started to cool off, the college towns seem to do really, really well. Now here in the heart of Jacksonville, 115% year over year, down 12%. So there's some areas that in the middle of town are light, and some of the areas on the south side look like they're starting to stack up with inventory up 70%. Moving along towards the Panhandle, Tallahassee is super light, which is no surprise. Much like Gainesville, Tallahassee has been putting up crazy numbers in terms of its price increases, things of that nature, and it's still not leading the state in terms of its growth for our capital there. Now looking towards the end of the state, you can see Panama City up 80% across the coastline. Navarre's up 56%. Gulf Breeze is up 57%. You see some dark spots across Pensacola into Milton, 120% year over year. Now, last chart I want to show you here on this part of the update for Florida, active housing inventory for sale in Florida compared to pre-pandemic levels. Again, this is important because if you see areas in dark green, they're in dark green at a time when it is scary. You have way less buyer demand in those areas, but yet they're now approaching pre-pandemic levels, which these are areas that are at the highest risk for price reductions, things of that nature. So let's take a look. I like this look because as you can go into Miami, you can see that for Miami, except for this one zip code in Fort Lauderdale and a couple right here, there's really not a big number of houses in this market yet. Now, again, there are far fewer buyers than there were back in 2019, but they're not surging like you're seeing over here. These areas like Cape Coral, Fort Myer, Port Charlotte, these are seeing even more inventory. In some cases, 50 to 60% more homes. These areas are seeing more inventory than historical norms. That's going to be a challenge for them to work through that inventory for the time being in the face of higher interest rates. Now, adjusting the view to the Central Florida market, we have the I-4 corridor coming straight through here. The Orlando metro area, again, look, most of Orange County, the most populous Orlando County, most of it is still well beneath the norm. But look at Osceola County. So you have Kissimmee, you have a lot of this Airbnb area is seeing a lot more inventory even against history. Some of the Daytona Beach markets are a little bit heavy. Some of the outside west edges of Ocala, a little bit heavy. And look at the Tampa St. Pete market. Most of Tampa proper is not seeing a surge, but we've been seeing a lot of this in St. Pete. I've been reporting this for the past year. Many of these markets are seeing a surge. I've been doing, the oceanfront market updates where I've been telling you that this edge out here is starting to see a lot of inventory sell up because prices against this Gulf side really went berserk over the past couple of years. You have marketplaces, zip codes there that were 200+% appreciation in a short period of time when the rest of us saw 80%. I mean, enormous growth. And there might be a little bit of sticker shock after all that. Again, we're shifting north. You can see this edge of Jacksonville. Jacksonville, even though that map a second ago against prior did not look good, that has been a stacking deck in the making before prior year. So Jacksonville has been seeing inventory build over time for quite a while, so much so that you actually see areas of Jacksonville 30, 40%, considerably higher than pre-pandemic, which is, you got to be careful. If you're looking anywhere on the west edge of Jacksonville, you got to do your homework in all these particular areas. You can see over here on the coastline, it's a different story altogether. Shifting the map a little east, you can see that most of the Tallahassee area is still lower than pre-pandemic. You can see here on the east side of Gainesville, starting to see some inventory stack up about 20% higher than historic norms. The west side and the center of Gainesville still well under pre-pandemic levels. As we scoot to the western edge of the tip of the Panhandle, we see Panama City, 72%, 127% over pre-pandemic. 33% up Panama City Beach. Fort Walton Beach up 17.5%. Milton, again, over 80% increase in inventory. And you can see some of the Pensacola areas right around 30% over the pre-pandemic levels. So again, some beautiful coastline out there, folks, some Gulf areas that hopefully, I know a lot of you are watching, you've been wanting a townhome in that area for a long time. Just might see it happen soon. All right, last chart I want to show you. This is resale data for the state of Florida. This is actually from the Florida Association of Realtors. You have access to this. If you have a real estate license, let me show you some of the back-end data that we've got from our association for March against last year. You can see at the top, closed sales down 10.4%. Remember, that's against 2023. We had one of the lowest years on record last year, and we're below it here in Florida for March. Look at cash sales. Cash sales are in tandem down with closed sales, so they are dropping as well. Median sale price up 3.9%. Average sale price is up 10%. And again, folks, this is just single family. This is not townhomes and condos mixed into the data because I'm going to show you some very interesting facts here in a second. Now check this out. New listings of single family homes are up 8% over last year, but look at the active inventory. While we're only seeing a trickle in of 8%, inventory is piled up to 41% year over year, right? It's the idea. Can you flood a basement with a trickle? Can you have a reservoir that can eventually fill completely up and go beyond what you need? You can if you just keep filling that thing up time over time. That's what we're seeing in Florida. All right, quick question. I want you to go in the comments below and help me with this one. If we're adding $1 trillion to the debt every 100 days, what are we accomplishing? What is the goal of the federal government if we're spending that much money and adding that much debt in such a short amount of time? Are we, A, trying to get reelected? Are we just trying to stave off recession? We're trying to make sure everything feels good until we get there. Or is it a bankruptcy move? Are we actually trying to cause damage? This is crazy, right? We're going to get out of the box. I want you to help me understand because I am fascinated with what's going on right now. And I can't put my head around it because I'm getting re-election emails from both parties, might I add. I say both because there's two. There's two main parties. Both of them are emailing me. I don't know how both parties have my information, but I'm getting information that is telling me from Washington saying, this person needs to be reelected as the fastest turnaround of the U.S. economy. It's amazing. And I'm sitting there and I'm looking at this and I'm going, the way we're saying this is beneficial is we're adding $1 trillion to our deficit every 100 days. This is tantamount to you coming home. Okay, so imagine you're me, you have a wife at home, you walk in every day, right? You walk in with 2 more Louis Vuitton bags. And then a week later, you've got Gucci clothes, some shoes, some loafers. And then a week later, you come in, you're like, I have a Rolls Royce outside. And then you're telling all of your friends how great your business is doing. But yet, in reality, all you did was borrow money for all those things. Would you come to your friends and say, I'm doing great. I've turned my household around. Like, help me understand what is being accomplished, because I'm out of options. And I'm falling on the mercy of crowdsourced information because I'm trying to understand it. I don't get it. I try to figure it out. But if you're considering selling a home in 2024, you owe it to yourself to save as much as you can. List your home for just 3%. That's 3% total in the listing agreement upfront, full service, beautiful photography, a lockbox, broker support, end-to-end, one of the most experienced broker teams by your side through the process for just 3% total. We all know it. Every penny counts. Don't pay too much when you list your home. Email me at info@jaredjones.com, or call 407-706-5000. We'll see you on the next one.